Donald Smith broke that chain of custody of evidence. That is mishandling of somebody's case.
At the time, what was Donald Smith? Was he just a regular deputy, or was he?
He was a regular patrol deputy. I thought he was investigator.
Heidi Campbell says that back on May 22nd of 2007, she was sexually assaulted by a male orderly while receiving mental health services in the Crossroads unit at Augusta Medical Center. Heidi said her case was botched by Donald Smith, and she believes he purposefully lost the evidence in her case at the orders of his boss at the time, former Augusta County Sheriff Randy Fisher. Heidi told me her heart-wrenching story and the events that she says took place that day. Heidi said the assault began with groping, but gradually led to exposure and restraint, and ended with forcible sodomy.
I experienced a assault or a rape at what was Augusta Medical Center. It's now Augusta Health. On the Crossroads unit, May 22nd, 2007. It asked me to stand up at one point during the intake process and remove my gown. And I said, well, shouldn't the female nurse be in here for this? And he says, no, she doesn't have to be in here for this part. So I'm looking around all nervous because I'm not sure what the heck is going on here. And he's asked me, he told me to take off my gown. And I did, because I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to. When you go into these places, you kind of do as you're told to do. You rub the wrong way, and you can be put in seclusion. You're looked at as though you're being irate. You're looked at as though you're lashing out. So I did what I was told, and I lowered my gown, and he walked up and he touched around my breast and around my waist, and he come back up, and I said, please don't do that. And he says, why, is it uncomfortable? And I said, yes, please don't do that. In the Crossroads unit, the restrooms are within the room, and the doors do not lock. You are expected to leave the door open a bit so that you can not be watched but guarded, which was normal protocol to me. I've been in the hospital other times, and that was normal protocol to me. I go in there and I use the restroom, use the toilet, get back up, and I'm washing my hands, and I go to come out, and he pushes through the door, pushes me, backs me up against the wall, and grabs my hand, and I didn't know what the heck he was going to do, so I balled up my fist. And he pulls an erection out of his nursing pants and holds my hand to it. And I was mortified. I didn't know what to do. I just started yelling, stop, you need to stop it. And he's like, oh, you don't like that? And I said, no, I don't like that. You need to stop it and just leave me alone. Let me go. He says, well, we'll let you go if you don't tell anybody anything. And I said, I'm not going to tell anybody anything. Just let me out of here. So he let me out, and at this point, I wasn't sure like how much further he was going to try to take things. And I was very nervous. I'm already upset because I've come in here to get help for myself, and I'm being treated this way. I don't know whether to say something. I don't know whether to not say something. I don't know how much backlash this is going to cause me if I say something. So I chose not to say anything at all because I was just scared. I didn't want any retaliation. And so I was just trying to get through his shift, I think is what the mentality was at the time, was, well, he can't do this once he has to go home. The nurse was going to come in and do the EKG, and he's like, oh, no, I've got it. So I'm laying in the bed, and he does the EKG, and he's messing around my breast again, and I just turn my head over this way, trying to avoid him the best that I can for the situation that I'm in. And he takes and he's just talking all this mess about, he's going on and on trying to make conversation with me. I'm really not interested. And I want him to hurry up and get this EKG over with. And my light was working, but he had it got cut out. He cut it out after he did the EKG. He'd walked out and he come back in the room and he's mumbling something, and I turn my head to try to figure out what he's saying, and he grabs my head and he forces himself in my mouth. I was mortified. I was disgusted. I was crying. I was spitting, throwing up, gagging in my gown. I couldn't believe he did this. I couldn't believe that he would do this. This is something I'm supposed to go in there and get help for myself. And he's done this to me. So I got to the point where after I finally calmed down and I got myself together, because I'm shaking and I'm upset, I didn't know how to handle it, what to do next. Because now he's taking it to the level I was scared he would take it to. So when he did that, I now had to decide how I was going to report him, because I knew I had to.
Heidi waited in horror until her assailant's shift was over and then reported the assault to a nurse.
I said, but he just sexually assaulted me. And like the look on her face just went like completely jaw-dropping, okay? It was determined that I needed to go to the ER and have a perk test get done. They did ask if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes. And so before I went up there, she's telling me I can shower. She's telling me, asked me to change. So the nurses at Crossroads took my gowns. I had a gown on, and she took that gown. And they put another one on me.
After being examined and tested, Heidi was initially interviewed by Augusta County Sheriff's investigator, Joey Good.
When I got done with the exam up in the ER, and it was not done till about like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm up all night after experiencing this ordeal. I'm up all night long through this process. So then I go back down to the room. I'm taken back down to the unit. And I meet with investigator Joey Good. He was the initial investigator on my case. He was very nice, personable. Seemed like he wanted to do everything to help me. And he said, well, he asked me to explain to him again in further detail, and I explained to him everything that I just said here and explained to you. And he says, so we're going to charge him with forcible sodomy and battery charges. After speaking with him, I felt pretty good about things. Like, we're moving in a good direction. They're going to get him. They're going to get him for what he did to me.
Heidi says 5 minutes before she was set to be released, Donald Smith, then only a road deputy, paid her a visit and questioned her about the assault, even though she had already given her statement to Investigator Good.
5 minutes before I'm to be discharged, along comes Donald Smith. I don't know why. I didn't know why, because he's in my room 5 minutes before I'm ready to walk out of the hospital, and he wants to know everything all over again. I told him exactly what I just explained to you, what I just explained to Joey Good. There's not anything I didn't tell him any differently. So, I went and I left the hospital after speaking with him. About a week later, my husband gets called in for a DNA test. They have to rule him out. Apparently, that's protocol, to rule out the spouse. While Joey Good is doing this in his office, a DNA swab, buccal swab of my husband's cheek. He's telling him that the DNA on the gown, on my gown, so that confirmed to me that they got the gown and the gown made it to the sheriff's department, because he's telling my husband that the DNA on the gown matches Brian Sykes. So again, we're feeling like, oh, good, okay, good. We've got, we're moving along. We're going to have our case in court,
A month later, Heidi says she was told by investigator Good that no charges would be filed and that a grand jury refused to indict her alleged assailant because there wasn't enough evidence.
About not quite a month later, I get a phone call. And it's like the floor fell right out from underneath of everything. I get a call saying they had a true bill hearing and that it was determined not to be a true bill. I'm on the phone with Joey Good. Apparently that's like a conference call because I can hear the echo in the background. And he's telling me that it was determined not to be a true bill. Apparently the Department of Social Services was there. Joey Good was there. After telling me that there was plenty of video of watching the maintenance man show up to the door and him push the maintenance man away, of him coming in and out of the room multiple times as he did. You go down to that crossroads unit, you look above almost every room, and you'll find a camera outside that door. Joey Good had told me that there was plenty of video, that there was plenty of DNA evidence, and now they're having a true bill hearing telling me that there was not enough evidence to push my case forward, that they're closing my case. I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. Why would Joey tell me these things? Why would he tell my husband that the DNA matched on the gown if there was not enough evidence? So I had asked him during that conference call, I was like, where's the gown? Oh, the gown doesn't prove anything. Well, where's all the video? He's like, what video? I said, Joey, you told me right about that time during that conference call that he said that I said that. I could hear click. He had hung it up to make it a private call. At that point, it was no longer a conference call with everybody. Evidently, I had put him on the spot. So Joey Good's like telling me that, what video? And I said, you told me there was plenty of video of him coming out the room. Why wouldn't you have collected the video? It doesn't make any sense to me. You said there was plenty of DNA on the gown, and now you're making like the gown doesn't even matter. What happened to the evidence in my case? Well, there just wasn't enough evidence, and I mean, we're not going to push it any further, and that's where we're at with it, Miss Campbell.
It appears all of the evidence she was originally told existed somehow disappeared. Heidi says after having to investigate her own case, she found out that Donald Smith was responsible for the chain of custody of the evidence in her case.
And I had found out in that process that Randy Fisher was a pretty big donor to Augusta Health and Augusta Medical Center at the time. I eventually went in 2016. I decided to go to Donald Smith and confront this head on. And at the time, I think I had kind of forgot that he was the last one to handle my case. But I would get the investigative report from them and realize, wow, he's the only one mentioned. Apparently, he wrote up the report. He was responsible for taking the evidence, chain of custody, as they call it. He was responsible for collecting the gown. He was responsible for collecting the video. The only thing he collected was an untested perk test kit. So it never even got tested. And when they had the not true bill hearing, they destroyed it. It's in the report as though they destroyed it, and that was less than a month after it happened. That DNA kit should have went to a crime lab. I have that on a phone call from Augusta Health forensic nurse today, now, in the present. That back then, The sexual assault nurse examiner should have collected the gown. The gown should have went to Donald Smith. Donald Smith, if Joey Good knew of this video, there's really nothing to say. How come Joey Good didn't collect the video? How come Joey Good didn't collect the gown? How come my evidence did not make it to the sheriff's department? If it wasn't purposeful.
Besides giving you the report and everything.
He
what
wouldn't
did
look at me. He wouldn't even look me in my eye, which just furthered the disgust that I had, because he put his investigator Brian Jenkins, and I know Brian Jenkins, and we go back a ways, and so it really shocked me, Brian's attitude about the whole thing. I sat in his office, and I was basically looking for an explanation as to what happened to the evidence, and all Brian Jenkins could bring to me was a report and a phone number.
So Sheriff Smith never sat down with you at all?
He did, but he quickly moved everybody else into the room. So it's like he didn't want to sit there and talk this out with me. The vibes off of that man just say, I know what I did. I mean, and I know he knows what he did, botching up my case. He can't look me in the eye. He doesn't want to speak to me about it one-on-one. He wants to pull other people into the room.
With no hope and nowhere else to turn, Heidi went to Augusta County Commonwealth's attorney, Tim Martin. Heidi says Martin refused to investigate the case or even look at the file she had, citing that him and Smith go way back.
I have lived with this 12 years now. I tried to take it to the Commonwealth's attorney. I tried to take Donald Smith's lies in his report, the lies that I could prove. And I'm not talking about just made up old stuff. You've seen it in the report yourself. Things I could prove that were lies in the report to Tim Martin, Commonwealth's attorney Tim Martin, because I was told he was above Donald Smith to go to him. I tried going to the Virginia State Police. They wanted nothing to do with my case because I'm a civilian and I can't just start a case by myself with the Virginia State Police. It has to be referred to them. So they referred me to the Commonwealth's attorney. Well, that was a huge mistake, because I went to Timothy Martin also that summer of 2016. I have my folder of the entire investigative report. I want to sit down with him. I all but demand to sit down with him. And I'm on a mission to show him this is how people's cases get handled in Augusta County. This is how women's cases get handled in Augusta County. So I put the folder down, and I open the first flap, and I go to, he's like, what's this? I said, this is documentation. He said, documentation of what? I said, there's lies in there from Donald Smith in my case in 2007 that you need to see, you need to be aware of. This is how people's cases are getting handled. He pushes it away, would not even look at it, wouldn't give it a second glance. And he says, I don't need to see that. I'm like, why don't you need to see that? I'm here trying to prove to you that they lie in documentation in people's cases. They mishandle people's cases. And this is a terrible injustice for people. And out it comes, Miss Campbell. Donald Smith and I go back a long ways. I was furious. I was very furious. I was like, look, Donald Smith and I go back a long ways too. I said, and I don't care. I said, I'm here trying to show you these things. Well, Miss Campbell, if you would hold on just a second, we're just trying to help you. I said, you're interested in helping yourself, and that's it.
So apparently Sheriff Smith has an issue with evidentiary procedures dating back to his days as a road deputy that have continued under his watch as Sheriff of Augusta County, with the temporary evidence locker and letting his officer take evidence out of the evidence room and never return it. Heidi wants to know when enough is enough.
Is me and Donald Smith go back a long ways. That's the old bro buddy system. That's the good old boy system that tells me you're going to put him above anything he does, any lies that he does, any injustices that he does to people, any lack of due process that he does to people's cases. I mean, again, I'm left walking away feeling hurt, angry, vulnerable, all over again. People deserve better than this. Women deserve better than this. And if they will do it to me, they will do it to them. When do we have a system in this county that is actually fair for everybody, that's not setting out to hurt people?
In Fishersville, Virginia, Theodore Whitelow, Breaking Through News.